Good morning, this is Dan. I just wanted to thank Lisa Schwinning from SNAPNHD for stopping by to help us understand the National Natural Hazard Report. Thank you.
Country and the world as far as that goes. You know, on our contracts, we're basically required to do a natural hazard report. And so I'm thinking, you know, a lot of times that just goes as a thing that we do, rather than a thing that we look into and understand and know the benefit of. And so with that report and with what you do, I know that there's so many things to it. Like now we have the fire hazard thing and it clearing the land around some places, you know, as a fire break and stuff. And so, you know, I would suggest maybe to you, you know, share with us why that report is important.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, first of all.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Lisa Swinning with SNAPNHD. And the natural hazard is one of the disclosures that sometimes, you know, just kind of gets passed over. But it is one of the most important disclosures as well. As you said, with all the fires that we've had, you know, the last few years, it's super important to know if that property is in a high fire zone. That's something that the natural hazard disclosure will disclose and tell you about the property. It also will tell you if it's in a flood zone or potential flood zone.
You know, we don't think much about the flood zone, I think, you know, in Fresno. But, you know, I've been here at times when the pumps and things, people sometimes don't know that, like our sewers, all that water is pumped somewhere. It doesn't just get drained down to a low spot somewhere. It's actually pumped somewhere.
Right.
If that system is down, you know, we do have flooding in different little places. I mean, it may not get into, you know, like half a house or anything, but there are flooding areas. And we don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, here, you're correct. I mean, we do have some flooding area. They may not flood, but that being said, the property is still in that flood zone, which is something that everyone needs to know, because if it is in a flood zone, a certain flood zone, for instance, flood zone A, that is one that flood insurance is actually required. So that's an extra cost, right, for the buyer. So the buyer.
I don't know if you saw in Florida, but, you know, the people away from the coast a little bit, many of them do not have flood insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And they're hurting.
Very much so. And just to be clear, the natural hazard disclosure is only required in California. So that is a disclosure that California, our wonderful state, has made a requirement in all real estate transactions. So, I mean, different places, other states, they don't have this disclosure. I mean, that being said, of course, I mean, the situation in Florida, you would hope that they would definitely have flood insurance because of the things that, you know, go on in those other places. But it is something that is super important to know about. We always suggest ordering the natural hazard disclosure at the time of listing. That way, if there's anything that's important in that disclosure about that APN, you know, it's known right from the get-go, you know, for everyone to see and understand, you know, if it's in a flood zone, if it's in a fire zone. Those are the two most common around here. Other than that, it also just provides, you know, some tax information. If there's a Mello-Roos on the property, which would be an additional
Mello, is that a popsicle or a Mello what?
Mello-Roos, I know, it's funny, you know, something that most of the general public don't even know about until they buy a property, right? Because then it comes up
until they have to pay it.
Exactly, and a Mello-Roos is something that is added to their property tax. So it's a tax. It's not like an HOA that would be like a monthly bill, like a PG&E bill. It's actually added to that property tax, which is another thing that's super important to know, just so that that buyer doesn't get bumped out of the bracket that they need to stay in to buy this home, because sometimes Melrose can be up to $200. So, those are things that we need to know right from the get-go so that those buyers know everything that they're getting into. So then, it doesn't go all the way to escrow and then fall out because of one of these situations.
Right. Well, and a tax never goes away, basically.
Correct.
It-
Yeah.
it-
And Melrose that one, they do have terms. So it might be like a 20-year term or a 30-year term. So, but it's around for a long time.
Well, there's also two parts to that. If I remember right, there's two parts to that. There's the natural hazard, but then you can also order the environmental. So there's like two different reports.
Yes. So there's the standard report and there's the environmental report. So the standard report is going to include all of these 6 hazard zones, which, like I said, is fire, flood, potential flood, seismic, landslide, a wildland area. So it'll include all of that. It'll include the tax information, and it also includes local disclosures. Like, for instance, Tulare County, they have a local disclosure that protects the oak tree. So if a buyer buys a piece of property with an oak tree on it and they're buying it to either farm it or build their home that they want to build, they cannot remove the oak tree. They are fined a very large amount if they ever removed the oak tree. So they're protected. So that's an example of like a local disclosure.
Wow. And what about the environmental?
The environmental includes...
Because a lot of people don't order that one. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty close and, 50-50. It kind of just depends. The environmental is going to provide a little bit more information for you if applicable. If there's not more information there, then it's not going to be provided. But that being said, it provides anything like underground. So, if there was a gas station on this property, years ago, and there's tanks underneath the ground, landfills and stuff like that. Anything like that is what the environmental would include, in the mountain communities, the different minerals and different things like that. And anything that's in the ground, that's what it's going to include. It will, tell you if there's anything around that property within a mile. So it is good information. It's good extra information if it's there. A lot of people just go ahead and order the environmental just in case. They want to make sure that they're covering all their bases and providing all the information that's needed for that property.
Now, these reports are super expensive, right?
I think it's the cheapest part of the whole transaction. So the standard report with SNAPNHD is $69.95, and the environmental is $89.95.
Wow.
So
And that's two separate costs, though, right? Or does the 89 include both of them?
89 is the whole report. So the standard is the environmental report. It's just the environmental has that little bit of extra. So they're the same report. It's just the environmental has a little extra, like I said. Anything that might be, under the ground or anything like that. So it's pretty much the same report, just has a little bit more information if it's applicable for that APN, for that property.
Awesome. So an extra $20 basically.
Yes, yeah. And
find it-
why not be safe, just in case, you never know. I mean, a lot of, in some parts of Fresno County, a lot of Madera County, a lot of Kings County, they order the environmental because, there's farming, land out. The mountain communities, Fresno County and Mariposa, those mountain communities definitely order the environmental, just because it's more apt to have something else to disclose.
Does it cover things like, you see rock slides and things like that occasionally, like if you're going up like the China Peak and things like that? Does it advise you of any of that stuff if you're up in that area?
Well, it will include landslides. So, I mean, it's not for the mountain communities, that just have those random,
Okay.
that might get shaken up by an earthquake or something and rocks fall, no, it's not going to disclose that. But landslides, yes. But I mean, we really don't see a lot of landslides around.
Right.
That's more down south and up north. Same with the seismic, with the liquefaction, the ground underneath the home maybe not being super stable. That is something that's also included. But again, we see that more so up north and down south.
It's interesting. So and with climate change and everything, is there anything referencing like heat versus not heat? I don't know if some people, I was reading and like places in the north where the weather is cooler, if a house is depreciating 100%, it depreciates at like 1% a year. And in southern, where it's hot, it depreciates faster, like 1.5% a year. And that's because of heat. And heat is damaging. And so I don't know if any weather plays into any reports or not.
No, that's not something that would be
Okay.
in the natural. Yeah, no.
What kind of questions do you normally get asked that we haven't covered?
I honestly, lately, there has been a lot of calls on flood. I've had, this is something that I probably pound into the ground like way too much, but the importance of ordering at the time of listing, because I've had multiple calls where they've actually, gone to escrow and they've waited until escrow to order the natural hazard disclosure. And in doing so, they get it and they find out that the property is in a flood zone. So then I get those phone calls because they're panicked, is it really in a flood zone? Is flood insurance needed? Because one thing that we do is we provide a flood certificate in our report if the home is in a flood zone. So, I go through and explain the flood certificate, which zone it's in, if there's a LOMOC letter. So, do you want me to explain the LOMOC letter?
I got time.
Okay. So, if the property is in a flood zone and there's a LOMOC letter on file, it will say.
And what is that?
The LOMOC letter is when the property owner or the builder, because a lot of properties, maybe, builders buy properties that are in a flood zone. What they do is they have a bunch of dirt on it. So they bring in, let's just use, if I were to buy a property, a piece of land, and I wanted to build a home, and I knew that property was in a flood zone, I knew that I needed to elevate the foundation of my structure, my home, to get out of that flood zone so that I wouldn't have to pay flood insurance on my home. Okay, so they bring in a bunch of dirt, and of course get it all packed in and get that foundation up, and then they build the home. But then it has to be inspected. So there's inspectors that will come out and they will inspect the home, and they will write up the report and do all what they need to do, and they send it to FEMA. FEMA is who determines all of these zones. FEMA determines the fire zones and the fire mapping, the flood zones and the flood mapping, all of that stuff. FEMA is who determines these things. So they send that report to FEMA. FEMA looks at it, and if they okay it, then they send back a letter, which is called a LOMOC letter. And it's dated, and it has a case number, and it states that that property is now when I say not the property, just the structure, just the home, is no longer in the flood zone, so it does not need flood insurance. So the property itself, let's say it's a 5-acre piece of land, the property is still in the flood zone, but the home would not be because
So I know you don't sell insurance.
No.
But are you aware? Is that an expensive policy?
Flood insurance and especially fire insurance is expensive.
Okay.
So, I mean, what I always just tell my agents is, when they're talking to their clients, and if they have a client that really wants this house no matter what, if it's in one of those zones, Get a few different quotes. Call your trusted insurance person, but go ahead and call a couple of others too, just to get a couple other quotes, because it can be pricey, unfortunately.
The other term I've heard lately is hardening. Did I make that up, or is that a real?
No. So that is part of a new form by CAR. CAR, because of all the fires, they made the fire.
And cars like Mercedes or.
CAR. I know. I should probably. I forget. Our general public actually doesn't. They don't even know what a natural hazard disclosure is, right? Most of the time. So that's also a job that I would love to have, is to be able to explain to my general public what this is. So CAR is California Association of Realtors, and they came up with disclosures, right, for all different kinds of real estate transactions. Because of our fires that we've had the last few years, they realized that something needed to be done to, help people that own properties in the fire communities, to help them understand what to do to protect their homes and the surrounding area around their home. So they came up with a form that's called the FHDS, Fire Hardening and Defensible Space Addendum. Okay, so this form is something that if the property is in a high to severely high fire zone, this form will need to be filled out by the seller.
And your report would determine that as well, right?
Absolutely. My report is going to tell you if it's in that high to severely high fire zone. We also are licensed by CAR to provide that form in our report for you if it's applicable.
Okay.
So the seller would have this form to fill out, and what defense, I'll tell you what hardening means and what defensible space means. Hardening is a term that's used for hardening your home. And this is for homes that were built before January 1st, 2010. This is the only time that the hardening part comes into play. So before that date, these homes might not have been built in a what they call hardened fashion, which means they might have a shake roof. They might have single pane windows. If they have a big deck, it might not have that fire sealant on it. The gutters might not have that metal mesh that's on top of the gutter, so that debris is stuck inside. So that's hardening your home. Defensible space is the area around your home. So it's making sure the area around your home is nice and clean and tight, basically. You don't want to have your big trees have bushes that are right under their last little limb, to where if the bush caught on fire, it's going to catch that tree on fire, right? You're not going to have wood piles around your home or by your deck.
You're essentially creating a fire break. Is that right?
Exactly. So it's honestly, and I feel that a lot of your mountain community people that have lived, that's been their life, they know this stuff. They know that they need to keep the grounds mowed down, to do it early in the morning, not in the summer, not later in the afternoon, so sparks.
We don't always do what we're supposed to do.
It's true. And the good thing is we have CAL FIRE that does make rounds in the mountain communities, and they make rounds and they check homes, and if they see something, they'll leave a notice on your door, for something that you need to take care of. So that's what defensible space is.
So Lisa, I think there's a way, I'm not very good at this stuff, to be honest with you, but I think you can put a comment down there with your phone number if someone's interested, so you can type that in maybe.
Sure, absolutely. And I would love to be able to answer any questions for agents or, even
people that want to argue.
For the general public, because, it's funny. It's just, I know when I first bought my first house, I had no idea what I was signing, because honestly, sometimes there's nothing to be disclosed in the natural hazard, even though that it's necessary. Sometimes there's nothing, which is great. So when you're going through escrow and you're signing things, they're just going to be like, this is the natural hazard. There was nothing to disclose. Just sign here. I didn't know. I was like, okay. So it's just good to know it because you want to make sure that your agent uses a solid, reputable company.
Right.
You know, that is going to have all the information needed because you don't want to get into a home and then find out something later. You want to make sure that everything is disclosed, you know, with the company that your agent chooses, which I would hope SNAPNHD.
What should I have asked you that I haven't?
You know what? You've done a great job. I mean, I feel like we have covered so much so quickly. This is kind of like the fast little elevator speech. So, yeah, no, I think you've done a phenomenal job. I think we've covered a lot about natural hazards.
So what you're saying is the more quiet I am, the better job I do? Because I haven't said much.
I know. I have been talking a lot. Do you have any other questions?
No, you know, I know. Other than I think that this is important information. And I think that, you know, I know for a fact that you do a great job of explaining it, not just today, but all the time.
Thank you.
You know, and I also know that you're a very personable person that cares about people, that goes out of her way sometimes, maybe all the time, but sometimes for sure, to make sure that people are helped.
Thank you.
And that's from personal experience over a few years now. You know,
it's one of those things, and I know it probably sounds cliche, but when you love what you do, it's not work, right? It's just you do it because you love it and you love who you do it with. And I'm passionate about it. You know, I know I work with a wonderful company, and I know we do a good job with our report. And so I want to share the love with everybody. I want everybody to be as excited about it as I am. So.
and it's very reasonable, to be honest. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know,
Like I said, it's the cheapest part of the transaction, and it could be so important, and it could kill a deal. So why not, right? And so if I could just say, you know, just throw it out there again. Order at the time of listing. There's never a cost until the closing of escrow, if and when. You know, get that report. When you do get it, look at it, look over it, and see if there's anything to be discussed. And I tell my buyer's agents and my seller's agents, because honestly, on the buyer side, if you're an agent that's going to take your client to 4 different homes to look at them, wouldn't you want to know everything about the property before you took them to those properties? So I tell my buyer's agent, get it, look at it. If there's anything to disclose and discuss with your client before you take them to that home.
Right.
Because with my company, we don't, like I said, we charge only if and when it closes escrow.
Lisa, I appreciate you being here. I really don't have anything else, to be honest.
Well, I appreciate you.
All I have to do is figure out how to close this thing down.
Hey, you're doing a great job, and this is awesome what you're doing. You're providing great information, and just keep it up. I love it, and I love working with you, so thank you for having me.
Well, to be clear, you provided the information. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.